The fall of an empire. Why experts say the US is following the path of Rome. What if I told you the most powerful nation on Earth may already be walking the same path that destroyed an empire? Not just any empire, but the mighty Roman Empire, a civilization that lasted over 1,000 years. A civilization that built roads, laws, armies, and cities that the world had never seen before. A civilization so powerful, so dominant, so deeply embedded in human history that it believed it would last forever. But it didn't. It fell. And now, centuries later, some of the world's top historians, economists, and political scientists are asking a question that nobody wants to hear. Is the United States next? This isn't conspiracy. This isn't fear-mongering. This is history. And history has a pattern. Part 1. The Illusion of Invincibility. At its peak, Rome was untouchable. It controlled land stretching from Britain to Egypt, from Spain to Syria. Its military was the most advanced fighting force on the planet. Its trade networks connected 3 continents. Its culture, its language, its architecture, its law shaped the entire world. Citizens of Rome didn't just feel powerful. They felt eternal. They used a phrase, Roma Eterna. Eternal Rome, because in their minds, Rome simply could not fall. Sound familiar? Today, the United States stands at the top of the global order, the largest military budget in human history, the world's reserve currency, cultural influence that reaches every corner of the planet through film, music, technology, and language. But here's the dangerous truth that history keeps trying to teach us. No empire falls because it wasn't powerful enough. Rome didn't collapse because it ran out of soldiers. It collapsed because of forces from within. Slow decay, hidden fractures, problems ignored for too long. And the most terrifying part? By the time most Romans realized what was happening, it was already too late. Part 2. Economic cracks. Let's talk about money, because every great empire has eventually faced the same economic reality. In Rome, the warning signs started subtly. The empire began debasing its currency, reducing the silver content in coins to pay for wars, government spending, and bloated bureaucracy. What followed was inflation. Prices rose, the middle class shrank, the poor got poorer, and the elite got richer. The wealth gap in Rome didn't just grow, it exploded. And as inequality deepened, so did unrest. Now look at today. The United States carries over $34 trillion in national debt, a number so large it's almost impossible to comprehend. Inflation has pressured working families across the country. The cost of housing, healthcare, and education has risen far beyond what wages can keep up with. And the wealth gap? The top 1% of Americans now hold more wealth than the entire bottom, 90% combined. Some economists, including those who have studied Rome's collapse in detail, draw a direct line between these numbers and historical warning signs. Because when an empire can no longer sustain its own economy, when its debts outgrow its productivity, when its people can no longer afford to live in the nation they built, collapse isn't a question of if, it's a question of when. Part 3. Political chaos. Rome wasn't just weakened economically, it was torn apart politically. In the later years of the Roman Republic, the Senate became a battleground, not for ideas, but for power. Alliances shifted overnight, leaders were assassinated, civil wars erupted. Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon, not to save Rome, but to dominate it. And after decades of political chaos, the Republic gave way to something else entirely. An empire ruled by emperors, who concentrated power into fewer and fewer hands. Sound familiar? In the United States today, political division has reached levels not seen in modern history. Bipartisan cooperation, once the foundation of American governance, has become nearly extinct. Two sides, two realities. Two completely different versions of what America is, and what it should be. Studies show that political polarization in the US has been steadily increasing since the 1990s. And today, it has reached its most extreme point since the Civil War. Think about that. The most divided since the Civil War. History shows us something chilling. No empire falls united. They fall when they turn against themselves. When internal conflict consumes the energy that should have been used to build, innovate, and defend. Rome's greatest enemy wasn't the Visigoths or the Vandals. Rome's greatest enemy was Rome itself. Part 4. Social decline and distraction. This is the part that hits hardest. Because while Rome was crumbling economically and politically, its leaders had a strategy to keep the population calm. Panem et circenses. Bread and circuses, free food, public spectacles, gladiator games. Keep the people fed and entertained, and they won't ask difficult questions. They won't demand accountability. They won't organize. They won't resist. It worked for a while. Now look at today. The average American spends over 7 hours per day consuming digital content. Social media algorithms are specifically designed to keep you scrolling, not thinking. Outrage cycles replace genuine political discourse. Celebrity drama drowns out congressional hearings. Viral trends expire before any real conversation can begin. And some experts argue this isn't entirely accidental. When a population is more focused on entertainment than education, more interested in trends than truth, more reactive than reflective, they become easier to mislead and harder to unite. The Roman poet Juvenal warned about this 2,000 years ago. He saw citizens trading their civic power for the comfort of distraction. The question is, are we doing the same thing? Part 5, Military Overstretch. At its height, Rome had legions stationed across 3 continents: Britain, North Africa, the Middle East, the Balkans, the Rhine, the Danube. Thousands of miles of borders to defend, hundreds of thousands of soldiers to pay, feed, and equip. And slowly, the cost became unsustainable. Local generals began acting independently. Loyalties shifted. The military that once protected Rome became a political tool used by powerful men to seize control rather than defend borders. Today, the United States maintains over 750 military bases in more than 80 countries. It spends more on defense than the next 10 nations combined. And yet, despite this staggering military investment, conflicts in the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and the Pacific continue to escalate. Military historians point to a concept called imperial overstretch. The idea that when an empire spreads its power too far, it can no longer effectively defend any of it. Rome learned this lesson too late. Some argue America may be learning it right now, because strength without sustainability is just a countdown. Part 6, the collapse of institutions. Here's something most people don't talk about when discussing Rome's fall. It wasn't just armies or economies that failed. It was trust in government, trust in law, trust in the institutions that held society together. When Roman citizens stopped believing that the Senate represented them, when they stopped trusting the courts, when corruption became so normalized that it was simply expected, the social contract broke. And without that contract, society doesn't function. It fractures. Today, poll after poll shows that trust in American institutions is at historic lows. Trust in Congress, in the media, in the justice system, even in elections themselves. When people stop believing in the systems designed to protect them, they stop participating in those systems. And when enough people disengage, those systems collapse not from attack, but from abandonment. Part 7, the final warning. In 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire officially fell. The last Roman emperor, a young man named Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer. No great battle, no dramatic final siege, just a quiet removal. A formality, really. Because by that point, Rome had already been hollow for decades. The infrastructure was crumbling. The government was dysfunctional. The military was fragmented. The economy was broken. The people were exhausted and divided. 476 AD wasn't the cause of Rome's fall. It was just the date it became official. And here is where we must ask the real question. Are the patterns we see today, economic strain, political division, institutional distrust, social distraction, military overstretch, are these just the natural cycles of history? Every society faces challenges. Every nation goes through difficult periods. Maybe this is just a rough chapter. Or are we watching the early stages of something that historians 200 years from now will study the same way we study Rome today? Conclusion: the question that remains. The fall of Rome wasn't just the end of an empire. It was the end of a world order. It plunged Europe into centuries of instability, a period we now call the Dark Ages. Roads fell apart. Trade collapsed. Knowledge was lost. Cities emptied. The people who lived through it didn't call it the fall of Rome. They just called it life getting harder. Year by year, generation by generation, until one day their grandchildren had no memory of what greatness once looked like. Now, the United States is not Rome. History doesn't copy and paste. America has strengths Rome never had. Democratic traditions, technological innovation, a constitution built to adapt. But strength alone has never saved an empire that refused to look inward. So now the question isn't just, is America collapsing? The real question is, are we paying attention? Because Rome's greatest lesson isn't about armies or economics or politics. It's about a people who had every warning sign and chose to look away. Empires don't fall in a day. They fall across generations. One ignored warning at a time. And the most dangerous thing any civilization can do is believe that it is the exception. One thing is certain, empires don't last forever. But the choices made right now might determine how much longer this one does.